You know it. I'm loving the series. Book 3, Dandelion Dynasty. Let's talk a little bit about it. Hello. Welcome to the Ponderings of Pete. I am Pete, and I talk about fantasy, sci-fi, just books in general. Mostly fantasy, though, as will be evidenced by this book, at least. If you are coming back, thanks so much for coming back. I really appreciate you guys supporting me and just keeping on watching. Feel free to leave a comment if you're looking forward to this one, if you've read this and you loved it. And if, strangely, the review for Book 3 in a series is your first video of mine that you're watching, hello, interesting person. If you like this review, go ahead and like the video. And comment and tell me where you are in the Dandelion Dynasty, all that jazz. Subscribe if you want to see more as that goes. Without further ado, as we all say, let's talk about The Veiled Throne. Firstly, I'm going to do a little bit of a non-spoiler section just to give you an idea of the book, and then I'm going to go into spoilers. I know it's kind of like Book 3, Book 4 is going to come out. Is it worth it to finish the series? I'll tell you what I can about this book. So, starting off with the non-spoiler section. This book, I would definitely say, is different in scope than the other two books. The first book, you have 15, 20 years go by, and the entire empire changes. And then the second book, maybe not 15 or 20 years, but a good amount of time passes. It's tighter, because you're more focused on specific characters. And again, the entire empire changes and the situation changes. The thing I think you should know going into this book is 3 and 4 were supposed to be one book originally, which is not necessarily a bad thing. There have been good series that have done this. It makes sense to me, because there is a lot in this book. It goes by really fast. You're like, wait, I'm 400 pages in this book? And part of this is because Liu is introducing us to new characters, and thus giving us more chapters of backstory. And, he's just doing his thing. There are some times, like in Wall of Storms and Grace of Kings, where, you're in the middle of a moment, and then he introduces a character, and you get an entire chapter of their backstory. And you're like, oh, we were in the middle of something there. What's happening? This book also feels a lot less focused on the fate of the world than the other two. Most of the book is taken up by a specific conflict that is not world-spanning or crazy. It is very small scale of a conflict that is emblematic of a lot of things. There's a lot of layers to this conflict, but A, it's not a traditional conflict that you would think it is, and B, it just at some point in the book you're probably going to wonder, why are we here? But the conflict is a good story, and it feels like he's setting stuff up with this conflict and trying to say something with this conflict. Because this specific conflict does wrap up in the book, but he's trying to say something with this conflict, and you just gotta figure out what it is. I did feel like there was a full arc with this specific conflict. There were other arcs in the book that I kind of felt were a little incomplete. We got to spend some time with all of the 4 children of the dynasty. We got to take a look into the society that the like you have built on Zana, on the island of Zana, which is interesting and terrifying to a certain extent. There is a particular character that was introduced in this book that I love. This dude is torn in the best way in terms of story arc. So I really liked this specific character's arc throughout this book, and I'm looking forward to him in the next one. And then the last expectation I would say is, at the end of Wall of Storms, we get Lutho, the turtle god, decides to become immortal. We see some of that. We don't see enough, in my opinion. We see more of the gods kind of focusing on this small-scale conflict that happens, and they're like, I wish Lutho was here. And then we glimpse Lutho in where he is now, outside of the Wall of Storms, but we don't get nearly enough, in my opinion. I really hope we see more of him in the last book, but we will see. Gia is definitely here and definitely causing frustration. She's definitely someone that I enjoy disliking to a certain extent, even though there actually was 1 or 2 sympathetic scenes with her in this book. But then she kind of turned around and I'm like, wait, no, I'm not sympathizing with you anymore. You're just doing bad stuff. What are you doing? What are you doing? Seriously, what are you doing? There are parts of this book that feel kind of incomplete because, again, it was meant to be part of Book 4, Speaking Bones. But there's also parts of it that are remarkably complete and great. There were a lot of great moments in The Veiled Throne. Definitely wasn't as explosive as Wall of Storms, but it was still really good. I will be reading Speaking Bones this month as well, in July. So finishing that up in July, end of July, I think, is when we're going to have the live show. It's going to be fun. That being said, let's talk some spoilers. I want to start out with Gia. What the heck are you doing? Like, she is just as infuriating. There was one or two times where she was like, I know I'm doing this for the greater good, and I know I'm doing bad things. She had this air of self-sacrifice, right? And I'm a sucker for self-sacrifice, like, FYI, like, that gets me. You're going to sacrifice yourself for other people. That's cool. But then I realized she wasn't just sacrificing herself. She's sacrificing all of unredeemed Dara, pretty much, to whatever she's trying to do. She's destabilizing Zana right now with the whatever the like you want to call it. I can never remember. It's like Uko Gandhi, I think. No, Gandhi Ukutasa, I think, which is son of Uku or new Uku. It's like New York, but you're an invader on a new planet. Well, same thing, difference. But anyways, I had a moment of sympathy, and then she was like, "Oh yeah, I purposely destabilized Ukutasa," and I'm like, "I don't like you. Stop." So she continues to be unlikable. But, like, she's such a well-written villain. Like, let's be honest. Her arc from the very first book to this one is just, like, this descent into villainy is almost not even the right word. This descent into justification for the terrible things. I'm really looking forward to seeing what she does. Like, she's going to do some crazy, annoying stuff. I'm afraid she's going to sacrifice her son, who she says she loves. Really scared for that. I saw a parallel between the Finns that she trained, her really loyal guard, and the devotion that Tenryo had from all of his Thanes, that they would be unquestionable about him. So I'm pretty sure his Finns would, like, assassinate Fyro if she asked them to. So that makes me nervous. The next one is Savo. Savo's story was so good. Like, it concluded with the whole, like, the like you suck. And it really committed these horrible atrocities. Am I on the wrong side? Oh, wait. The politics in Dara are just as bad. They all suck, too. Everybody sucks. I really don't want to know what I want to do. I'm like, I feel you, bro. Like, everybody does suck. I mean, on a base level, we're all selfish creatures. And he's finally realizing that. It's great. It's what happens when people get a hold of power. I'm very interested in seeing how the rest of his story goes. I liked his story. I liked the love story between him and Farah. I think this was more along the lines of what I wanted between Gia and Kuni. Like, I wanted a full-on love story for them, but we didn't get it because we didn't have time. So it felt kind of rushed. But here with Farah and Savo, we got to, like, it was a slow burn. It was nice. It was great. But it was a tragedy, which was also like, it was sad. Thera is definitely someone who I felt like her story was very incomplete, so I can't really talk that much about it now. Timu, again, very incomplete story. Fyro, very incomplete story. A lot of focus on Farah. I'm fine with that. It was great to get to know Farah. She could definitely do some interesting things next book. We'll see. I feel like her arc is kind of going towards the whole, like, maybe she could unite people. I do think that what little Tanavaki's brother has figured out about, there's going to be another opening, it felt a little contrived. Thara is like, I'm not telling anybody, but there's a deadline. I don't know if they know. And as soon as I heard, she knew, but I was like, Kudio doesn't know. There's no way that this dude knows. But he's going to have to know for there to be tension, for there to be something to happen. It's kind of like, okay. I loved, with the cooking competition, like, this was the thing where I loved the commentary of the gods of, like, yo, what are we doing here focusing on this cooking competition? And then one of the gods, I can't remember who it was, it might have been Tazu, who is strangely wise. Tazu is the best god, let's just say that right now. Tazu is the absolute best. But Tazu was just like, well, maybe it's cool and emblematic. And I'm like, oh yeah, you're kind of like signposting, you're like signaling to the audience real hard here, Ken Liu. But it was hilarious. It was funny. I like that kind of meta commentary that he has going on in this book with the gods. It's hilarious. I love the, like, slew of random inventions with the cooking competition as well. I like that the entire cooking competition wasn't just, we're won over by the simplicity of their ingredients. We have extravagance and simplicity. Let's value the simplicity. I don't know about you, but like that sort of thing kind of bugs me in like competitions. I mean, I know that's like, oh, they bought out the competition, so they deserve to lose, and they're just gonna lose because I, as the grand author, says they're gonna lose because simplicity beats it out. No. Not always. Chill. There's a reason they went with that strategy, right? It works. But the Splendid Urn actually was innovative and creative and cool, and this whole like, it's all about the story you tell. I loved that. I ate that. That was great. And they invented creme brulee, roller coasters, and ice cream all in the span of a month, right? That was wild. All of a sudden. I really hope that we see more of the Blossom Gang next book and we keep on with them. I think they're going to get lost in the sauce with all the things that have to happen with Speaking Bones, but I hope they're more active than I think they will be. All right, and just the cooking competition in general was... I loved how many little things were woven into it and how emblematic of a bunch of different things it was. You have how it represents the conflict within Savo. The Savo and Dandelion love story, representing some of the possibilities of what could happen with the Like You and Dara people. The corrupt trader possibly representing Gia, because there was a few weird parallels in this book between that. You have that whole extravagance versus innovation. It's interesting because that felt like almost a rehash of Cooney becoming emperor, right? Like Farah literally fought her father's fight with the cooking competition because Matapir was extravagance and Cooney was innovation to the max. I bet you if you really aligned it with the Grace of Kings, you could see the different plot points. That's actually kind of wild that I just kind of realized randomly. Liu's got some brain on him. Could you argue that Farah is now the closest thing to her father of all of the children? It's possible. Is that foreshadowing? I don't know. Anyways, that's, I think, all I want to talk about. If you're watching this when it comes out, I am currently in Ireland having fun. Have a great rest. Don't overwork yourself. All that jazz.